What's good, everybody? Welcome inside the Patriots postgame show here on CLNS Media, leading online provider of audio and video coverage of your favorite New England Patriots. Welcome inside alongside everyone's favorite Evan Lazar. That's Evan Valenti filling in for Alex Barth here today. Got a lot to talk about here in this game. Huge, absolutely monumental win for the New England Patriots. 27-24 over the Chargers. The Pats now improved to 4-4 on the season, 3-0 on the road. Biggest win on the year. So much to talk about in this game. We'll get to Mac Jones later on in the show, obviously. The rookie quarterback. Great second half showing for him. We'll get to the play calling because Evan and I went back and forth, at least in the first half. A little bit about maybe some problems with McDaniel's play calling. The defense obviously stepped up for sure. Adrian Phillips against his old team. 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, pretty much to seal the game for New England. An excellent job there for the former Charger. But Ev, we got to get right into this stuff. And by the way, people, sound off in the comment section. I'll be reading through this stuff. I'm not trolling by wearing a Christmas sweater or Halloween. It says Patriots on it, brother. Come on now. We'll get into a lot of that. Again, comment section, fill that stuff up. But Evan, biggest win of the year. Pats now 3-0 on the road.
Yeah, hard to believe.
21. What are your big takeaways from this win, 27-24 of the Chargers?
It wasn't perfect, and the fact is that over the last 2 years, since Tom Brady has left, when the Patriots don't have a perfect script and they don't have everything go their way, in a lot of games over the last 2 seasons, we have seen them crater and we have seen them lose tight games because they can't finish it out in the end of the game, or they have a sequence in the middle quarters like they did in this game in that second quarter, which was a disaster. And I'm sure we'll get to the red zone play calling and all that good stuff here in a bit. But you have the red zone play calling issues. You have a couple holding penalties, call back big plays on the ground. 1 Damian Harris touchdown. You have Kendrick Bourne fumbling the football. You have the run defense having some struggles. So certainly a lot of things to improve on, but yet the Patriots still beat a quality opponent on the road and get a statement win here. And I think a lot of other times over the last 2 years, we would have seen this Patriots team post Brady just collapse after one of these mistakes or shoot themselves in the foot down the stretch and not get things done. So the fact that they were able to keep it together, hold it together, stay the course, and then finish the game out the way that they did, that is a big step in the right direction for this Patriots team, because it's not going to be perfect every week. It's not going to be 54-13 like it was last week against the Jets every single week, especially against quality teams like the Chargers. So you have to overcome that adversity and overcome those mistakes to be a good and successful football team, and they were able to go out there and do that today.
Yeah, you look at some of the games they've played recently. I mean, you look at the Cowboys game, right? Mac throws that pick six, but then comes right back with a 75-yard touchdown. The very next play to Kendrick Bourne. That shows some mental fortitude there. They come back here again. Bourne fumbles. He gets benched the rest of the game. In comes more N'Keal Harry, and they're still able to get it done. I mean, it shows you that this Patriots team, I know it's been frustrating. They're 4-4. They've had some games, especially against some big-time opponents, Cowboys, Bucks, where they've been in the game and just couldn't quite get over the hump. The missed field goal at the end of regulation against the Buccaneers, tough way to lose, especially against Brady in the rain, a completely winnable game there. Losing to Dak in OT, another tough one there. This time, again, on the road, tough place in terms of playing a tough team. I wouldn't say the environment was really against New England in any way. Sunny day in California with, 60% Patriots?
Right.
So it wasn't like it was a tough environment that way, but that's a team in the Chargers coming off of a bye, so they've had extra time to prepare. Brandon Staley's been an excellent coach so far here this year, and especially defensively. His teams have given a couple of pretty good offenses, some tough fits so far this year. But this is, again, you look at a developing team, a lot of new pieces. They're getting better. I mean, that defense is really coming around. The offensive line does have some issues, but they're giving Mac a little bit more time, week by week. McDaniel's giving, Mac some more play calling responsibilities, more response. I mean, they went for it on 4th down for the first time. Felt amazing. Though they didn't pick it up. I thought the play calling was bad. And again, we'll get to that later. But as you said, this team is clearly progressing in the right direction. They have some tough games coming up for sure. They're trying to, obviously the Bills are in the catbird seat for that, AFC East division title. But, the Patriots can still fight for a wild card spot here. And if they lost this one, you'd say, all right, they're the 2 of the 3 wins have come against the Jets, who won today against the Bengals somehow. But this team is really getting strong, and you can see what we talked about at the earlier part of the year. Good run game, better defense. A sort of a grit and grind mentality. It's really starting to come to fruition here, Ev.
Yeah, if you can pick yourself up off the mat after making a bunch of mistakes like the Patriots did out there today, like we mentioned, the holding calls, the turnover by Kendrick Bourne, some of the red zone play calling in the second quarter, and just have all these types of things happen. And I think that final drive, the 14-play drive that took 7 minutes off the clock, gets them into field goal range, and they kick the field goal to go up 2 scores. Those are the types of big boy drives that good teams put together. Just ice the game out and just choke the other team out and give the Chargers, who did score that touchdown late and did make it a little bit interesting there, but even still, they onside kick it with 10 seconds left, right? Because the Patriots were able to run that clock down all the way on the ensuing drive. So having those types of big game type of plays, right? Winning plays at the end of the football game. Adrian Phillips' pick 6, just a huge turning point in this game. And the Patriots finally are the team that are rising to that occasion and making that play. Like you mentioned, against Tampa Bay, against Dallas, even sometimes during last season, but in this season in particular, those 2 games are the ones that everybody points to where they just couldn't make enough plays to get over the top. And here it feels good that they finally were able to make a few more plays than the Chargers late in this game, because this was close the entire way, and the Patriots were still able to do it. And I know we're going to move over to the defense, so just to segue into that, another really big picture takeaway that I have from this game defensively is that Bill Belichick is still very much capable of confusing a good quarterback. And today they mixed it up. They played a lot of man, a lot of zone. They did a lot of stuff post-snap with their rotations and blitzes and stuff like that. And Justin Herbert had one of his worst games of the season. Similarly, he had one of his worst games of his season in his rookie year, in his offensive rookie of the year campaign against the Patriots last year. So Bill clearly has Herbert's number somehow, some way. He clearly gets it done against Justin Herbert. And that is something that, another thing you can kind of hang your hat on, is game plan wise, big picture wise, Belichick can still go out there and scheme it up with the best of them against a good quarterback.
Yeah, we'll get more into the defense. Evan Valenti, Evan Lazar here on the CLNS postgame show. Pats win 27-24 over the Chargers. Again, sound off the comment section. I'm reading the stuff, and I agree with the guy that just said penalties were a problem. Got to tighten stuff up, especially, again, for the Pats, who notoriously are on a team that kills themselves. Spot the numbers that aren't really that are a little bit different here. You have Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, but one of the best quarterbacks in general. The last 2 weeks, Baltimore and New England, his percentage in terms of completion percentage under 60%, 56% against the Baltimore Ravens. And then, of course, his worst game in terms of percentage-wise this entire season, 51% against the Patriots. Some big plays, especially late. Christian Barmore coming on late. Matthew Judon did some really great things late. I love Judon. He's been such an unbelievable player for the defense so far this year. He's been exactly what they needed. It works his ass off. Generates a lot of pass rushes by himself. Did you see him? And I know he kind of lined up all over the place. I wasn't quite sure if he was on Slater's side a lot of the game, because we all know Rashawn Slater's been a really excellent pickup for the first-round draft pick out of Northwestern for the Chargers. He's been terrific. I thought Judon played a really solid game. They did a good job getting pressure up front, and it seemed like they had a sort of a formula here. You looked at Mike Williams, who's had an unbelievable season throughout the entire year up to this game. 2 catches, 19 yards, no touchdowns. Keenan Allen, 6 catches, 77 yards. Eckler, 6 catches, 60 yards, and out of the backfield, 11 carries, 64 yards. So, of course, he had that big 28-yarder to really break things, to get them out of, I think, was deep in their own territory, to give them a little breathing room, I think, in the second half there. But it looks like, if you go into a game, Ev, against this Chargers offense, you have a couple of guys you have to limit. Obviously, Eckler, with the way he can destroy things out of the backfield, that's one. Mike Williams having a terrific season is 2. Keenan Allen's tough to hang with. That's 3. How do you think they performed against all 3 of those guys, how they schemed that up?
Yeah, Belichick called it a big 4 during the week, adding Jared Cook, the tight end, into that mix. And when you look at it, the Patriots allowed I think here it is, 144 yards on 3 plays, right? 75-yard run by Jackson, 41-yard completion to Keenan Allen on that opening drive, and the 28-yard run that you mentioned to Austin Eckler. The rest of the game, they pretty much held the Chargers. I think it's doing some quick math around 4 yards per play the rest of the game, if you take those 3 big plays out. Now, those big plays, definitely, you can't just do that, right? You can't just take them out and act like they didn't happen. Right. But at the same time, throughout the course of most of the game, they were able to hold the Chargers offense pretty much in check. And I thought that the Chargers and Joe Lombardi and their offensive coordinator tried a few different ways to get Austin Eckler the ball up the field. He had that one up the seam. He was looking for a flag. I thought it was really tight coverage where they have 2 verticals on that side of the field, and they fill in with the seam with the running back, and they flood that vertical zone in a cover 3 zone. And that's a difficult route to defend out of cover 3 when you get the running back adding in up the seam. It's extremely difficult to defend that route. And the Patriots did a nice job there of getting that route defended and making sure they close those gaps for Austin Eckler. So a couple of weeks ago, the Patriots played a decent amount of zone against Dallas, and Dak Prescott absolutely tore them apart against zone coverage. He was sitting there all day, all the time in the world to throw the football, and he was killing them down the field against zone. In this game, they had a much better mix of pass rush and coverage so that Herbert didn't have all day to throw, and they were able to tighten up on some of those zones in the back end as well. So just a sound game, and Belichick talks about this all the time, where you talk about having all 3 levels married up, right? In order to have a good pass defense, you have to have the coverage and the rush working in tandem. If you have good coverage, but you have a poor rush, then the quarterback's going to sit there for 5 to 6 seconds and somebody's going to come free. If you have a good rush, but nobody's covering, then it doesn't matter because the breakdowns on the back end are going to burn you. So the Patriots had consistently good rush and coverage in this game. Judon, Uche, Barmore, a couple of the guys there, but I'm sure there will be a host of many others that also recorded pressures in this game once you go back and track it in the review, that were able to get Justin Herbert off his spot. And similarly to Mac Jones, who we're going to talk about here as well, Mac looked a little bit rattled by the Chargers' pass rush at times in this game and sped up his internal clock as a result. Herbert, I thought so too, was a little bit rattled by the amount of heat that was on him, because the first Adrian Phillips interception, for example, is just a high throw by Justin Herbert. Eckler's open over the middle of the field on the angle route, and he felt it a little bit collapsing on him, and he threw it off his back foot, and he airmailed it a little, and it tips off of Eckler's hands and goes right to Adrian Phillips. So a lot of really good pass rush in this game from the Patriots, and I actually thought that Matt Judon probably could have drawn 2 or 3 holding calls that weren't called. So a lot of really effective pass rush helped them out, and I think that's where I would start with this defensive performance. And you look at how they did it too. Not a ton of blitzing. I think there was a couple of situational blitzes mixed in there, but a lot of those simulated pressures where you put 5 guys up on the line of scrimmage, 1 guy drops out, and the offensive line has to decipher which ones are coming and which ones are dropping. And this Chargers O-line just wasn't up for it.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a second, but a great point here by Ken Hamaker. I hope I said that last name right. Defense held up because the offense gave them some rest. That's a good point, okay? Yeah. When you're not on the field for, the time of possession stats, if you look at the time of possession throughout this game, Patriots 35 minutes, 24 seconds, Chargers 24 minutes, 36 seconds. Pats did a great job keeping the defense off the field in terms of keeping the Patriots defense off the field. And when they were on the field, they were well rested, did a really great job. And that's the thing I find interesting. You made a good point about the team not blitzing as much. And it seems like this is maybe sort of a trend in the NFL against some of these high-end passing offenses. And I'm not quite sure where you stand on this, but if you go and look at some of the stuff that's being done to Patrick Mahomes as an example, a lot of people are dropping, 7, 8 into coverage, only rushing 3 and 4 and making life very difficult for him. Were you surprised that was the game plan, so to speak, going against Herbert, who's got so many weapons and who's got an offensive line that times can hold up for him?
No, because they did the same thing against him last year for the most part. And look, the reason why you do it is because it's all well and good to sit there and say, oh, we're going to pressure the quarterback and we're going to blitz the quarterback. But just from a sheer math point of view, if you put 5 guys in the rush, then you're taking a guy out of coverage, right? So if you rush 5, then you only have 6 guys to cover. And if you rush 6, then you only have 5 guys to cover. So whenever you add in more rushers, you're leaving your back end vulnerable if you can't get home against the pressure. And although the Chargers offensive line and pass protection is vulnerable, Justin Herbert is such a difficult guy to get on the ground because he's a big dude and he's an athlete. So he can move around, he can move off his spot, and he can reset and then throw the ball down the field. So what is happening, like you said, with Kansas City and what the Patriots did here today against Herbert was a lot of 7-man coverages where they get one-on-one matchups on the offensive line for their pass rushers by doing different simulated rush type of things where they put 5 guys or 6 guys up on the line of scrimmage and make you think the pressure is coming, and then they back off. And that still forces the offensive line to account for those rushers as if they were coming. And that allows you to still keep that 7 guys in coverage structure, because it's all well and good to say that you're going to get home with blitzing. But again, if Herbert is able to scramble, or he's able to move around, or he's able to fend guys off and hold guys off, then that's allowing him to then go ahead and attack man-to-man coverage basically on the back end with a whole lot of space, with a lot of really good playmakers. So it's always the key against these good quarterbacks. We talked about it with Tom Brady for 20 years here in New England. What's the key to beating Brady? It was always pressure with 4, right? If you could keep 7 guys committed to coverage and you could get home with the 4-man rush, then you had a chance against Tom Brady. And that the Patriots are flipping the script on a lot of teams over the last couple of seasons where they're doing the same sort of thing. And now they got guys like Judon and guys like Barmore that can go in there and win those one-on-ones, and that makes it a more effective strategy.
Yeah, Dan Kelly here. Mike Williams, 2 catches, 19 yards. Kind of like Tyreek Hill, where if you stop him, you stop the offense. That's a sentence I never thought I would say ever, but this season it seems to be proving the actual point. Evan Valenti, Evan Lazar, Patriots postgame show here on CLNS Media. Again, keep signing off in the comment section. Pats now again proved to 4 on the season, back at 500, 3-0 on the road. Unbelievable there, to be honest with you. Just, I could be. This team is unfortunately taking some tough L's at home, but continues to be tough on the road. Love to see that. We'll get to Mac Jones a little bit because Mac, and this kind of goes hand in hand. Mac had a pretty decent day today, especially when you consider the second half. Patriots rookie quarterback, 18 of 35 for 217. No touchdowns, no picks, but was effective, especially in the second half. We'll get to that. But I do want to get to some of the play calling stuff because, again, Evan and I were talking throughout the game, and then I texted him close to the first half. I was like, hey, so what do you think after this first half? He goes, defense is great, McDaniel's play calling, and Mac. And so we'll get to Mac in a second. We've already talked about the defense, but the offensive play calling continues to baffle me in the first half. The 4th down play where I don't know what they were trying to do there, just didn't really work. Some of the times when, the one thing that kills me is sometimes when the offense is really succeeding by either passing a lot in a row or running a lot in a row, they try to do the quick thing, to do the opposite of it, try and catch the defense off guard, but they're clearly ready for that. It just doesn't work. Like, just keep doing the things that work for you. Going into this game, it seemed like the Patriots would have success running the football. Didn't have a ton of it in the first half. They mixed in a bunch of guys, Brandon Bolden, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris. But you saw if you carry that over to the second half and keep running the football, they can find success with that. So differences for you, Evan, between the first half, second half play calling. What did anything that happened differently in the second half that stuck out to you at all?
So I thought the middle quarters were a little bit of a shaky, especially the second quarter was kind of a horrid from Josh McDaniels in the red zone in particular, because you get inside the 6-yard line twice on the Chargers and you throw the football 5 times down there. And that was the part where you just got to play bully ball at that point and muscle the ball in with Damian Harris and Jakob Johnson in the backfield. And that's going to have to be an identity of this Patriots team, is once you get inside the 5, they have to just be able to knock the football in on the ground. That's how you want to be able to win there. Now, I like the aggressiveness on first down because early on in the game, they were dialing up passing plays on first down, and they actually hit Nelson Aguilar on a big play down the field for 44 yards on first down. I believe the crosser to Hunter Henry that got them down into the red zone initially was also on first down. It was definitely on first or second down. So early down passing was effective for the Patriots in this game. And when I was going through why would they do this against a run defense that's really struggled all year long in the Chargers, it was because for the most part, the Chargers knew the Patriots wanted to come into this game and run the football. The Patriots knew they wanted to come in and run the football. And the way that the Pats kind of just zigged when the Chargers were expecting them to zag. And it was effective at times, but once you get down there, throwing the football inside the 5-yard line instead of just trying to bully it in there is inexcusable with the team that they have and the setup that they have. You have Mike Onwenu and Shaq Mason, and you have a good running back and Damian Harris, 2 tight ends that can block, a fullback that can block, and you're at the 2-yard line and you're running all these empty formation passing plays. I mean, just get out of here with that, right? Then he also had the brain fart again, dialing up a 3rd and 1 handoff to Brandon Bolden. And I know people
right? Using the gun for that.
Yeah. And I know people want to take shots at Brandon Bolden, but at the same time, that's a play calling miscue, right? Because everybody in the entire world that was watching that game, including Derwin James, as it turned out, who made the tackle for a loss, knew Brandon Bolden was getting the football there. Everybody saw it coming. And because it was so predictable, Derwin James completely blew up the play. So it wasn't even so much that I'm upset that Brandon Bolden was the ball carrier. It was more so that in that moment, that play call just really cost them a big opportunity there to stop on the Chargers' throats. So in my mind, and the numbers favor the Patriots for the most part across the board. First downs, total yards. The Chargers end up outgaining them, but a lot of that came on that last drive by the Chargers at the end of regulation there. So the Patriots outplayed the Chargers in this game. I actually thought the Patriots could have been up even more late in this game if they didn't have some of these situational things that didn't go their way earlier on in the game. So in the second quarter, after those 2 failed red zone drives back to back, they get stuffed and they get turned over the ball over on downs, and they kick a field goal from the Chargers 1-yard line. They go turnover on downs from the Chargers 6-yard line. They end up kicking a field goal. At that point, I thought, there's the game, right? They had an opportunity to go up a couple of scores, to punch the football in and really turn this game. And I said that this is going to end up costing them in the end of the game. But luckily, this team was more resilient than that, and they continued to fight, and they were able to make plays late.
Talking Patriots, again, 27-24 over the Chargers. Some of the stuff that happens, with this team in terms of trying to call plays and trying to give this team a good, rhythm, so to speak, right? And it's hard with their offensive line over the first couple of weeks. That's been, guys, they're in or out. We haven't seen Trent Brown in a long time. They're moving guys around. Oweno now over at right tackle. Has this been the best offensive line assignment in your opinion, Ev?
Yeah, this is the best starting 5 that they have. And I would even say just moving forward, you can count on Trent Brown coming back if you want. I'm not counting on Trent Brown coming back. And I would just assume that either he's not going to come back because he's not healthy, or maybe there's just an opportunity there to build some chemistry and continuity with this starting 5. And that would really change a whole lot for the Patriots, because this starting 5 is more than capable of blocking guys, right? They're more than capable of opening holes in the run game and blocking it up in pass protection. Now they just need to get some quality reps together, in-game reps, and get that chemistry and that continuity rolling. If this group of 5, they played great last week, they were good enough this week, if they continue to stack these positive games together and Trent Brown decides to come back in week 13 from this calf injury, I'm saying right now you're a security blanket, right? You're an insurance policy, Trent. We're going to roll with the hot hands that we have that have been winning us football games, because this group has definitely stabilized the offensive line. And I mentioned that late drive. I mentioned it again. You go on that 14-play drive, and that is something that the offensive line can really hang their hat on. That's finishing the football game as an offensive line. And that's what the Patriots desperately needed.
Yeah, and you get right now into Mac Jones, see the lower third there, 18 of 15, 18 of 35, 218 yards passing, no touchdowns, no picks. And the first half was rough. I mean, he's going up against a Brandon Staley defense, made his job pretty tough, confusing him, getting a lot of pressure on him, making him do things with the football earlier than he wanted to. But in the second half, really settled down, 11 for 24 for 100 yards. I thought, he looked more composed. It looked like he was seeing things up front that, wasn't really as confusing as it was in the first half. Made some good decisions. He's taking shots now. He's a little more comfortable. He's obviously very comfortable in the pocket. Even with pressure in his face, he still will take that 1/2 second just to get the half step more open and throw it down there and absorb a hit and go to the ground. I love that about him. He's just tough as hell inside the pocket. But you can see he's getting more comfortable, especially in the second half, throwing the ball downfield, looking for guys, trying to make the big play. And one thing that I thought was interesting was late in the fourth quarter, obviously they're trying to burn clock and run the football and make the Chargers use their timeouts. But a little part of me still wanted to see Mac kind of like step on the throat of the Chargers and probably rip one in somewhere and try and get a touchdown. But obviously you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to lose the game on something like that. Just hand the ball off to your running back, whether it's 37, Davian Harris, from Andre Stevenson, whoever it has to be, and let's kill the clock and let's get out of here with a win. But with Mac, we've seen a lot of development over the first couple of weeks. I mean, he's, I think more than just a game manager at this point. I know that some people want to, harp on his average, depth of target, and everybody wants to talk about how he's not taking shots downfield. But over the past couple of weeks, you've seen him take a couple of shots. I mean, he's looking for Aguilar deep down the field a couple of times, missed him once, and it looked like he threw it to Aguilar's outside shoulder, and Aguilar went, a little more inside I think it was in the second half. Just missed him by about a step and a half. You're seeing a little bit of that with Aguilar. They don't really have a ton of field stretchers, but if the pocket can stay, up a little bit, he'll find a guy like Jacoby Myers for 7, 8, 9, 15 yards somewhere in there. What do you think of Mac Jones' performance here against the Chargers?
Good enough, certainly. And I think the one thing that stands out from Mac's day is that he did not have his A game in this game, right? From an efficiency standpoint, from a metric standpoint, one of his worst performances, statistically speaking, of the season in terms of downfield accuracy, especially in the first half. But even though he didn't have his A game, I thought Charles Davis on the broadcast made a great comparison of an ace pitcher not having his 10 strikeout stuff, but still needing to find a way to win the game for his team. And that is definitely what it felt like out of Mac Jones today. He doesn't make the fatal errors, right? He doesn't go out there and throw the big pick like Justin Herbert did, or he doesn't have the big sack or the turnover that is just a huge miscue that cost the Patriots the game. He didn't have that mistake, even though he wasn't at his brightest or at his sharpest, and he was able to make some good downfield throws. As you mentioned, I thought the 44-yarder early on in this game to Nelson Aguilar on the deep crosser was massive for the entire chess match of the game moving forward, because once the Patriots hit on that one, it had the Chargers thinking, oh, he will push the ball down the field, right? And he will throw it deep. And you mentioned the adot police, as I call them.
This drives me crazy. Because it's like, oh, he's not taking shots down the field. Well, when he has not a lot of time to throw the football, which he had the first couple of weeks, the offensive line wasn't holding up. Like, obviously, you can't throw the ball down the field when he just doesn't have the opportunity to even look that way. So the adot police kill me every single week. I just watch the game and understand what's happening in front of you. Matt can't do some of that stuff, not because he's not able to. He just doesn't have the freaking time, everybody.
Yeah, I think it's funny because he averaged 9.6 air yards per attempt in this game and probably had his worst accuracy game of the season. So it's not that he can't throw it deep. It's just not the most efficient play to throw the football deep constantly, unless you have Tyreek Hill or prime Randy Moss or some deep threat that's going to make those higher percentage throws. When your best deep threat is a guy like Aguilar, who's a good but not great receiver, that is not the most efficient play most of the time. Most of the time, the cleanest play is to Hunter Henry, or the cleanest throw is to Jacoby Myers, and those throws are going to be a little bit shorter. Now, in this game, in the first half especially, Matt got rattled by the pressure, and I don't want to come off as saying that this is some terrible thing that happened, but he definitely looked like he had sped up his internal clock a little bit because the Chargers pass rush was getting home, and that affected his decision making. He had to throw to Hunter Henry where he had to get rid of the football, and Hunter Henry wasn't even out of his break yet and ended up hitting Hunter Henry in the legs somewhere because he didn't turn around to make the catch yet. He tried to hit Nelson Aguilar down the sideline on a deep comeback route, and he had to get rid of it too early, and there wasn't he didn't get out of the break quick enough, and Aguilar was not there where he needed to be at the time. So it definitely sped him up at times, and there were quite a few examples where he was just a little bit off as a result, but then I felt like he settled down, like you said, and made some big throws in the second half and was able to go out there and be able to give the Patriots enough and push them over the edge, which is all you can really ask for.
Yo, C-Bar, I'm pretty revved up right now, brother. I don't know if I guess I'm bringing you down, but I'm not much to bring it down from in terms of this game. I mean, again, 27-24, pretty amazing win here for the Patriots. Their biggest win of the year, I think, by far. It's a win not against the Jets, which is very impressive.
Right.
But Mac Jones, he's been able to, he makes mistakes every once in a while, sure, but he's pretty accurate. I like the fact that he's, taking more shots down the field. Again, it seems like, it seems like Belichick and McDaniels have started to trust him a little bit more, like we all want them to. I put me in this discussion because, it kills me to watch Mac. Like the first couple of weeks, it's like, all he does is hit wide guys that are open. Like, does he take the 3-yard play instead of the 15-yard play? Yeah, but that's just because it's open. Like, what do you want him to do? And I'm really impressed with his processing speed and the way he can go, look left, look right, look center, and then find somebody. Like, that's the stuff that you can't really teach at the NFL level. You either have that or you don't. It's hard to kind of learn that. And if you haven't learned it at college speed or high school speed, it's going to be hard to learn at NFL speed. This is a pretty impressive team here, a pretty impressive team win. All three phases, I think they did a great job offensively, milking clock in the second half, sticking with the run game. We've talked about the defense. They were able to keep Justin Herbert pretty much out of the end zone for most of the night. They bottled up Mike Williams and Keenan Allen for the most part. In special teams, Nick Folk, a couple of big field goals. Some good job there by Gunnar Olszewski, bringing some kicks, and you get 20 yards per return. He was pretty spectacular in that particular regard. I think the kickoff team and the punt coverage team. This is a team win. It takes all three phases from a team to beat a really solid team on the road like they just did. And I don't just want to make sure we mention every single unit because, again, without certain things happening certain ways, they might not eke this one out at.
Yeah, and one last thing just on Mac. We talked about this a lot last week when he was starting to hunt with the football against those one-on-ones on the outside a little bit more against the Jets. And he hit the big one to Kendrick Bourne at the end of the game. And I said, that's a throw that even though it happens late in a blowout, when you start putting those types of passes on tape and then you start putting the intent on tape, even like he threw a couple of deep balls in this game to Nelson Aguilar that they didn't connect on. But when you show that you are willing to do that, and when you get that matchup and you're willing to push the ball outside the numbers and throw it deep to a one-on-one matchup, that gets defenses to react. And now all of a sudden they are going to play it, your offense, a little bit differently. And when everything isn't happening within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they are willing to push the football down the field a little bit more. And all it takes, like the 44-yarder today to Aguilar or the big throw last week to Bourne, all it takes on some of these deep passes is to hit one of them. And that's a game-flipping type of play. So just the intent or the aggressiveness from Mac Jones to be willing to throw that go ball down the sideline, that is going to get teams and defenses to approach the Patriots when they go into game plan just a little bit differently. And maybe that does get them to play more two deep structures, which opens up the run game for Damian Harris. Or maybe that does get them to take the safety out of the middle of the field sometimes, and that opens it up for Myers and Henry in the middle of the field. Just those little types of things, even the threat of it is going to change how defenses play them. And that's what they've been looking for as the last frontier, if you will, for Mac Jones, is when you get that matchup, when you get that one-on-one and the safeties in the middle and you are able to throw that football outside the numbers and Aguilar is showing, even if he doesn't hit it, if Aguilar is showing that he's getting a step on a guy, or he is giving Mac an opportunity to complete that pass, eventually those two will get on the same page and they'll start hitting on a couple of these deep balls down the field, and defenses will pay for it, giving them those one-on-one. So for the last 3-4 years, I would say maybe since 2018, the Patriots, the MO against the Patriots has been to play the single high safety up top, stack the box to defend the run, and flood the middle of the field because they don't have anybody outside the numbers that scares you. They don't have that outside threat that's going to force you to play differently. If the Patriots can show that Aguilar is enough of that outside threat, then maybe they will get some of those lighter boxes and they will open up things from everybody else.
Yeah, they need someone to win on the outside consistently, and Aguilar was brought in just to do that. And, at least when they look his way, again, like you said, it forces you to at least think the fact that they can try that at any time. I mean, you mentioned that play to Bourne. It was almost a touchdown. It was funny. I don't know if you saw. I'm sure you saw this. It was like the clip of Mac and Brady like side by side making the same throw in the same week.
Yeah.
Mac, and they did that 5-step drop. Mac hits his back foot, I think, on like the 46-yard line. Throws an absolute dime on the left sideline to Bourne, and that's the kind of stuff that I love about Mac Jones. Like his touch, his anticipation, his reading of the field, like is at a different level than a lot of these other guys. And that's the thing that I think people missed when it came to evaluating him. I mean, some people really, harped on this when it came to the pre-draft evaluation of Mac. It's like, yeah, okay, he might not have like the sexiest 40 time, and he might not have the biggest arm, and he might not have this and that. But what he does have is touch, and it's a high-level touch and anticipation, and we see that week in and week out. And as McDaniels lets Mac do more of the offense, you're going to see Max shine more. And what's funny about this game is yeah, it wasn't a tremendous game in terms of statistics for Mac, but he did exactly what they had to do to get the win, right? 217 yards, 18 to 35. That's below what we've seen from him as an average throughout the entire season. He's been statistically upper 60s, even 70% completion percentage throughout the year. But this one wasn't necessarily that. And this is what, when you look for a quarterback, again, as you said, in the broadcast, you're not going to have your A game every single week, but you need to win with your B game, you need to win with your C game. And it's important for the Patriots to know that that they can win against a quality opponent, even if Mac isn't outrageously good, even if he's just above average or
they weren't outrageously good today, right? This was not a clean performance, and the fact that they, as a team, Mac included, were able to beat a very, very good Chargers team with their B game, with not their A game, bodes really well for the Patriots. Last week, you play a terrible Jets team that actually went out and beat the Bengals today. So I don't know how terrible the Jets actually are. Right. And the Patriots absolutely blow the doors off the Jets 54-13. And that was a perfect game. That was an A+ from the Patriots across the board. Today was probably more like a C+, B- type of game, but you still go on the road and you beat a Chargers team that is very, very good. That was 4-2 coming into it, that was coming off the bye and had a lot of time to prepare. And they still go out there and they beat them. So again, what I said at the top of the show, I'll echo it again. The Patriots, since Brady has left, and really at the tail end of 2019 too, with Brady, when they would make a couple of big errors in the game, a turnover, a touchdown called back by a holding penalty on Justin Herron, Damian Harris basically looked like he broke the game open, and then he gets called back for a holding penalty. And they fumble a couple of plays later, a huge potential swing in the game. In the second quarter, you go 0-for-2 in the red zone after you get it in at 1st and goal from the 6, 1st and goal from the 4, and you can't get the football in. Those types of sequences and those types of miscues typically were burying the Patriots basically from the midway point of 2019 on. And that today the Pats were able to exercise those demons a little bit and go out there and still get a W. And that's really, really huge. And with Mac, you continuously see even his C game. At least he's not going out there and throwing 3 picks, right? And he's holding the game together, and he's making some throws late when he needed to make some throws. The last drive of the game for the Patriots offense, he makes the throw to Jacoby Myers. He makes the throw down the sideline to N'Keal Harry. Those are the types of plays that you look at and you say, it didn't go the best it could have possibly gone, but he rose up at the end there and was able to make some big plays to get the offense into field goal range. Still too many stalled drives offensively. The run defense was horrid, right? They gave up over 8 yards per carry to the Chargers today. And we can talk about that in a couple of minutes here too. But you look at all these types of things that went wrong and the fact that the Patriots still won the game, and that bodes extremely well for New England moving forward.
Yeah, big win, 27-24 over the Chargers. Evan Valenti, Evan Lazar here on the New England Patriots postgame show here on CLNS Media, leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the New England Patriots. Pats now won 2 games in a row. They've put some really good film on tape the past couple of weeks. Reminded me a little bit of the Houston game. They didn't have their best effort, didn't have their best game, still able to ground a win on the road once more. Before we move on outside of this game, have anything else you want to hit on before we talk about 2 other things that I want to touch on before we leave here today?
So I do want to talk about the run defense really quickly, because you give up 160 yards and over 8 yards per carry to this Chargers run offense that was 27th in the league coming into the game. So on the one hand, the answer is to a degree that the Patriots are loading up in terms of personnel, game plan wise, to stop Justin Herbert in the Chargers passing attack. And they were going to give up some yards on the ground and probably live with some of the plays that they gave up on the ground in order to protect in the back end and be able to hold together against the pass. But in that type of game plan, you're hoping to give up 4.5, 5 yards per carry. You're not hoping to give up 8, right? That's really not good. So you're looking at some of the things that went wrong for this Patriots team. You look at the one big play, the 75-yarder, that certainly accounted for a lot of the yardage. And if you take that play out, it's not quite as bad. But Jawan Williams does his job on that outside run. His job is to crack that block on the outside and force the run back inside. He's the second level force. His job is just to force it back into the middle of the field. Once it gets forced back into the middle of the field, that's when you're hoping that your big guys like Dante Hightower and Juwan Bentley and the big guys on the D-line are going to close the gaps and be able to make the play. But they allow Jackson to cut back, and obviously Hightower whiffs in the hole, and Devin McCourty over pursues, and the whole thing opens up. A really good hustle play by J.C. Jackson, actually, to tackle Jackson, the other Jackson, before it gets into the end zone. But overall, you look at that play, you look at some of the runs Eckler was able to break off. Just fundamentally, it was not a clean performance by the run defense. Poor tackling, poor pursuit, poor fundamentals on the defensive line on a couple of occasions in terms of technique. So they need to clean that up, because even if the game plan going in is we're going to surrender some yards on the run in favor of stopping the pass, you can't give up 8 yards per carry. That's just too high of a number.
Yeah, so I want to get in a little bit. You mentioned Dante Hightower, and I've seen this a couple of times here in the comments section, and there've been people all throughout, either media or just people on Twitter, just fans. Is in your estimation, is there something wrong with Dante Hightower? Is he looking a step slower too for you, or is this something that people are overreacting to?
Yeah, it's tough with him because you see flashes of the old Dante Hightower at times, and in my mind, has he lost a step? Probably. He's not as nimble as maybe he once was for his size, but when I look at him, I start to question whether or not he should be out there as much as he is at this stage of his career. And if they can get him to be more of a situational player where he's maybe only playing 45, 50% of the snaps instead of 80% of the snaps, and maybe some of these plays where he gets caught in space like he did on that run and wasn't able to make the tackle in the hole, maybe those happen a little bit less. But you can't, he's such an important piece in terms of the communication and the leadership on that defense that he's still very important to that locker room. But in my mind, reducing his role to some capacity would probably go a long way to improving his overall performance, because maybe we're at the point of Dante Hightower's career where he's not an every down player anymore. And that's okay, because a lot of guys at this stage of their career, when they get into their 30s, they play reduced roles and they're able to be more effective in sort of a super sub type of capacity where they're only out there for 40% of the downs, but they're really good in those 40% of the downs. So that is where I would go at this problem. At this point with Dante Hightower would be to try to reduce his snap counts a little bit and try to keep him fresher. And they have the bodies to do it, whether it's playing more dime with Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips in the box, or playing Josh Uche more off the line, or whatever the case may be. It's not like they don't have depth at linebacker. Jamie Collins, if they think that he's able to do it as well, could possibly be an option there. So they have plenty of depth at that spot to make Hightower's role a little bit smaller.
I question the guys that can fill in. I mean, Dante Hightower is a pretty important piece of the defense, as you said, from a communication standpoint. I mean, again, you would know this better than I do, but Josh Uche doesn't look like a type of player like a Hightower. It seems like to me that Uche's best skill is his speed, which is better coming off the edge than it is in the middle. I mean, they have Van Noy off the edge as well. They have Juwan Bentley as more of a thumper, but again, I don't know if he's going to be capable of stepping into that role. Jamie Collins, maybe it has to come from a safety. Maybe it has to be Kyle Duggar. Maybe it has to be Adrian Phillips instead of getting production from your linebacker. Maybe it has to be a safety playing that safety linebacker hybrid role that we've seen so famously done, not just by Belichick teams in the past, but teams all around the NFL now. I just don't know what the answer to, like, okay, we're going to replace Dante Hightower with this guy. It's like, that's kind of a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Year, you know? Well, I think Bentley's had a nice year, and he's certainly somebody that's been in the system for long enough that could call some of the checks and do some of the communicating aspects in terms of play calling, things like that Hightower might be able to do. But I would still leave Hightower in the game on first down, certainly, and probably on most second downs as well. But you start to get into, let's say it's 2nd and 10, for example, right? Or it's 3rd and 9. And some of these situational times when they are in more obvious passing situations, because he's not as effective of a pass rusher as he used to be, and he's not as effective of a player in space as he might be used to be. So getting him out of those types of situations, I would say, would be critical for the defense and for him personally to improve his play. Or like you said, he's one of your OGs, he's one of your most important players, and you go down with the ship with him to a degree. And maybe that's how you have to play it as well if you're the Patriots. But I was texting with Alex Barth earlier tonight, as we often do during the game, and going back and forth. And both of us, after the Hightower play, after he overran it and gave up the 75-yarder, said, Bill's going to draft a middle linebacker in the first round, isn't he? Right? We're all going to mock left tackles and cornerbacks and receivers and all these players to the Patriots in the first round, and the Pats are going to try and go ahead and get their next Hightower, right? And that might be where they go with it too.
Yeah, I mean, I screams tackle to me, considering the problems they've had up front.
Yeah, me as well.
I'm a big Chris Olave fan, so I will continue to pump that bandwagon. I love that guy. But you're right; it's going to be a linebacker for sure. They'll get this cornerback in the second round. That's their favorite thing to do. Couple more topics before we finish up here. Again, Pats, big win, 27-24 over the Chargers. We talked about the run defense, their problems today, stopping a Chargers offense that likes to spread it out, likes to throw the football. But again, a couple of big plays for that Chargers running back stable. And looking at the schedule here, Ev, got 2 big games coming up, Cleveland and Tennessee. Cleveland's in 2 weeks, Tennessee's in 4. You have 2 teams that love to run the football. You know, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in Cleveland. We'll see, both the health statuses for both of those guys coming up here, with Cleveland 2 weeks to rest them up. And then, of course, Big King Derrick Henry looking at you at week 12. I don't like to look too far ahead, but if you're having problems stopping this Chargers running offensive attack here, there's 2 better ones coming up. And I would think that, I know you don't look a game ahead or whatever, but somebody's got to be looking at those 2 teams trying to figure out how the hell they're going to stop both of those rushing attacks. This could be a real big problem for New England. And for those wondering, Cleveland game's at home, and so is Tennessee game. So, Pats have had some good luck on the road this year. Both those games will be at home, unfortunately. But I am worried about those 2 games specifically. Have any concern there?
Yeah, so Cleveland and especially, but Tennessee as well, are 2 games that have stuck out to me for a while now as games where another team could really beat you on the line of scrimmage. And it seems it's so simple to talk about, but we don't talk about it enough because we get so caught up in the quarterbacks and the receiver play and the fantasy football angles of it. But 9 times out of 10 in the NFL, the game is won and lost in the trenches. It's really that simple, right? The team that plays better on the line of scrimmage wins. I don't know if we could somehow quantify that in a number, but if we could, I'm sure the analytics guys can get in there and do that. You would see that bears out more times than not, that if the team that blocks the best and the team that rushes the best typically wins the football game. And you look at that and you see those two teams, and those are two teams that have the horses to be able to beat you on the line of scrimmage. And you also look at, in terms of the next matchup against Carolina, a really good defensive front that Carolina has put together there at Brian Burns and company. That's a tough front to block as well. Their offensive line might not be as good as the Titans in Cleveland, but in terms of what they can do in terms of the pass rush, they're really effective as well. So
I'm not winning the game though if Sam Darnold's playing quarterback. Just gonna tell you that right now.
Yeah, that's gonna help.
Sam Darnold's still seeing ghosts out there, man.
Yeah, and you also have Baker Mayfield injured, playing hurt, so you would expect that Bill Belichick's going to put 8 guys in the box and dare Baker Mayfield to beat him with a bum shoulder and things like that. But look, those are games. These next couple, it's great that the Patriots won this game against the Chargers, and all week long we talked about how if the Patriots were going to go on a run this season, they had to win this game in Los Angeles. They had to use that Jets game as a springboard for the rest of the season and move forward with the rest of the season on a positive note. And they were able to do that today against the Chargers, but you can't then go in next week to Carolina and put up a dud and then get right back to below 500, right? You need to now start to string these wins together consecutively, and hopefully this can continue to be a building block for this team moving forward, these couple of wins that we've had.
All right, Evan Valenti, Evan Lazar, wrapping up here. It's our final segment, and I mentioned that it's our final segment so I can get you guys prepared here in the comments section, because we do have to talk about the trade deadline coming up this week. November 2nd, which is what, Tuesday? I don't even know
what day it's Tuesday at 4 p.m., yes.
Tuesday at 4 p.m. So what I need everybody to do in the comment section is sign off on your favorite Patriots trade target. But as we look here towards the trade deadline, Evan, the cap is going to be an issue bringing anybody in. I saw, Kyle Fuller a lot in the comments section. I think there needs to be some cap gymnastics in order for that to happen. I think somebody's got to eat some salary at some point for that to happen. Everybody wants another wide receiver, another new shiny toy for the Patriots. Cornerback obviously is a need for this team. Offensive line is potentially. Allen Robinson, Dustin, get out of here. That's not happening. Come on now. Although I would love to see Allen Robinson. As much as I love him to death, I hope he just has a good season, not just because he's on one of my fantasy teams. But any favorite trade targets for you, Evan? Do you see the Patriots making a move at the deadline here?
I don't think there are going to be any splashes at the deadline. The Patriots don't have the cap space to do it at the moment, as much as I would love it. The only move that you could possibly see, there could be a trade. I'm not saying that they've had any talks yet with Houston, but there are a couple of players on the Houston roster that would make sense to go grab if you're the Patriots, whether it's Rex Burkhead or Desmond King, the slot nickel corner that they had a healthy scratch there today in Houston. He's a player that could play inside for you if you're not 100% sold on Miles Bryant, although Miles Bryant played very well today. So maybe he's safe in that spot as well. Brandon Cooks would be great. He's cheap. He's available potentially. That would be a nice move for New England, but at the moment, I don't really see them making a massive move. I thought maybe we could see finally a N'Keal Harry trade at the deadline, but then Kendrick Bourne fumbles today, and N'Keal Harry makes some good plays, and they might want to hang on to that unless they're trading N'Keal Harry to Houston with a pick for Brandon Cooks, and they're getting a wide receiver back in the deal. I don't think that they're going to hurt their depth too much there because they don't view Gunner as an offensive player, right? He's a returner only. So I think if you look at that depth and you only have those 3 guys that you really can count on, Myers, Bourne, Aguilar, if one of those guys goes down, then you just have no depth at wide receiver. So Well, we'll see. I just don't think it's going to be a big or active deadline for the Patriots. And I can tell you, outside of maybe some of the names in Houston that I've seen thrown around for the Patriots, guys like Kyle Fuller, Devontae Parker, none of the Allen Robinson, as you said, none of those things are happening. None of those things are happening.
And there's no way that the Dolphins are trading Devontae Parker to their division rival. That didn't happen. I know Brian Flores has a connection to the Patriots, but there's no way in how that is going to happen. They're not giving them anybody, just to be totally clear on that. Now, I'm not as totally cap savvy as everybody else is. I'm just going to be frankly honest about that. Yeah. Is there a restructure that can happen at this time of year, or is that just off the table at this point? Is there
they could do it, but yeah, they could do it. They could, convert salary to signing bonus, or they could extend somebody that currently is on a high cap hit. Like for example, let's say they wanted to give, I know people might cringe when I say these names, but if they wanted to give Hightower or McCourty or somebody like that an extension to spread out the cap hit that they have this season, they could do that and free up some space. But ultimately, what you're doing when you make a move like that is you're kicking the can down the road on the cap. And if you're the Patriots and you're sitting at 4-4, and look, we're all riding high off this win against the Chargers. It was great to see them go out and beat a good football team today. But you have to be realistic about your expectations the rest of the season. And are you truly, truly a Super Bowl contender this year? Right. And I think the answer is still no. You're still kind of building up to that. And if that's the case, then doing all these cap gymnastics to get another player in here to just go on a mini run and probably end up short of the end goal probably doesn't make much sense. I would rather them keep the cap flexibility going into next offseason and use the money then once they have a full year of Mac Jones under their belt, once they're able to kind of get this thing rolling a little bit more. I don't mind wanting the playoffs. I want the Patriots to push for the playoffs, but this year is more about than it is about trying to win a Super Bowl in 2021 right away with Mac. So I would much rather them keep the cap flexibility than start doing all these gymnastics and stuff like that to fit another big name under the cap this season.
Let's say like you're scrolling through Twitter or like you get the notification from Schefter, the Patriots have made a trade for blank and it makes you fist pump right away. What's that name?
That's a good question. Based off of the names that might potentially be out there from what I've heard, Brandon Cooks would be the biggest one. I just look at the fact, two things. One, Aguilar right now is the only guy that can get up the field on the team, right, that the Patriots have. So being able to put both those guys out on the field together would give them a whole lot of speed. I can't remember the last time the Patriots had two sub 4-4 guys on the roster at the same time that could make those types of plays down the field like Cooks and Aguilar could. And then you also add in that Cooks has been here before and knows the playbook and knows the system. So it should be it shouldn't be a Mohamed Sanu type of situation where the guy doesn't know the playbook and can't get up to speed quick enough and that type of thing. So that would be a nice move, but I really would manage expectations with the trade deadline this year, and I don't expect any real fireworks unless you consider them trading N'Keal Harry, for example, a firework. Then maybe that would be the one thing that I could see happening.
Did Stallworth have 4.4 speed? Because that's the only time I can think of.
Yeah, so that was the last, when I wrote about it this weekend, that was the last time I could think of was Moss Stallworth, right? And nobody, Aguilar and Cooks are not in the same stratosphere as Randy Moss, but that type of speed is really not something the Patriots have had. And you start putting those two guys out on the field together, and then you get Myers and Henry to fill in over the intermediate and short parts of the field, and they are pushing those safeties up the field, and that's how you start to create some explosive plays through the passing game. And you can definitely see that when Mac has open receivers down the field, he can get them the football. That's not a problem, right? He doesn't have an issue with that. So if they can get him more open guys, I thought today when he had guys open and he had time to throw, he was good once again from the pocket. So I really think that they're onto something here with the offense as a whole. If McDaniels could just get them out of his own way with some of the play calling, and they could hang on to the football a little bit better with the fumbles, then I think they'd be good in really good shape moving forward.
So again, we're all hoping for Brandon Cooks on Tuesday, folks, just to give this offense a little more explosion. I love it.
That's the only one that makes sense from a cap perspective. He's only due about $1.5 million on the rest of his contract, so the Patriots could technically fit his money under the cap, especially if they trade a player to Houston for Brandon Cooks. Like if they were to trade N'Keal or they were to trade Chase Winovich maybe for Brandon Cooks, that would basically make it a net zero in terms of what they were bringing in and going out in terms of the cap. So I think that there is some trades that maybe they'll be in on, but I don't really expect it to be a super active day.
Yep, I don't think so either. You got anything coming up this week we need to know about in terms of writing on CLNS Media?
Yeah, of course. We'll have Patriots Beat on Tuesday with myself and Alex Barr to recap this game, but we'll also be on right after the trade deadline around 6 o'clock probably. So if they do make a move, we'll be right there with you on Tuesday afternoon to talk about it. Obviously on CLNSmedia.com, I'll have my 10 things reacting to this game up here in an hour or so. So you can read that game recap. We'll have film review. I always do a film review of Mac Jones every single week, right? Because he's the name that everybody cares the most about. But this week might be the one week where you got to take a longer look at the defense. So maybe we'll do both, and we'll try to fit both of those in.
Meanwhile, we all need to pressure Mina Kimes to go on Patriots Beat because she keeps tweeting out Evan's articles, but not going on the show.
I know.
On Patriots Beat. Come on now.
I really appreciate Mina. She's a good, great analyst. I mean, one of the best. So I really
get her on. We got everybody in the comment section. I see all of you. You all have Twitter accounts. You got to pressure her to get on the show because she's amazing. It would be good for Evan and her to talk some football. They're going to be fun. That's going to do it for this show. It was a great time. I had a blast. It was my first time doing this post-game show. It's been a while since I've done a post-game show, so I want to thank you all for having me. Evan Lazar, always bringing the heat every single week. Check out his stuff on CLNSmedia.com. It's the best analysis you'll get anywhere. Trust me. I've seen a lot of it. Evan brings it every single week with detailed breakdowns, especially the quarterback position that you will not find anywhere else. Make sure you subscribe to CLNS Media on YouTube. Turns out if you're watching this, you probably already subscribed. But if you're not, hit that subscribe button. We're coming at you a bunch with Patriots, with Bruins now in full swing. You'll see me a lot on the Celtics side of things, okay? It's been a frustrating season.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Hey, look, man, it's content, baby. Let's bring it. Actually, the worse the team is, the better the content is. To be frankly honest with you, myself, Adam Kaufman, we do Celtics Beat every single week, bringing a new guest. It's a lot of fun, so you can join us there. But for Evan Lazar, I'm Evan Valenti, my boy and me, producing this show. Thanks to John Zanis for letting me do this show today. It was an honor. Thank you very much. And thanks to you guys in the comment section. You guys absolutely rule. I love seeing all these things on the side. I can comment and kind of interact in real time. So for Lazar, I'm Evan Valenti. We'll see you guys next week. Pats win 27-24, improved to 4-4 on the season. Playoffs? Potentially.